The construction goes on at the Coliseum in Oakland, while on the field, the rebuilding continues of the Oakland Athletics. And tonight, the Athletics entertain the Cleveland Indians. Hi again, everyone, and welcome to Oakland with Joe Morgan. I'm Dwayne Statz. Good to have you with us. Joe, the A's are in a rebuilding mode, and after 2 wins over the Indians, they are feeling very good.
Well, they have a reason to feel good because they have put together a group of young players who are very coachable. They do not make the same mistakes twice, but they're also hustling type players, enthusiastic, and they're doing it more with that than they are with talent and experience.
The Cleveland Indians last year won 100 games and started this season by dropping the first 3. Since then, only twice have they lost as many as 2 in a row.
Well, it's easy to make the case that the Cleveland Indians are the best team in baseball. They have a good pitching staff, but most of all, they kill mediocre pitching. And a lot of teams are sending a lot of mediocre pitchers out there. And they've accomplished all this without Eddie Murray, who is not hitting very well right now. So when he starts hitting, look out.
Tonight at the Coliseum, the A's are looking for a sweep. The Indians are looking for a lone win in this series. The pitching matchup, Charles Nagy for the Indians, Carlos Reyes for the A's. The Indians start tonight in first place with a record of 20 wins and 11 losses atop the American League Central Division, leading the second place Chicago White Sox. Second in the league in hitting, 290, 38 home runs. And here's the lineup for Mike Hargrove's Cleveland Indians. Kenny Lofton leading off, followed by Julio Franco, back from Japan, hitting second. And playing first base, Carlos Baerga, the third place hitter. Albert Bell in the cleanup spot. Eddie Murray, the DH. Manny Ramirez in right field, followed by Jim Thome. Sandy Alomar Jr. does the catching. Batting ninth is the shortstop, Omar Vizquel.
And there you get a look at Carlos Reyes. He has a curveball, slider, change. None of the pitches are dominating pitches, except mixing them together. He changes speeds well, and he usually keeps the hitters off balance. And let's take a look at the defense. And it's a pretty good defense, you know, especially for a group of young players. Giambi at third is replacing Brocious, but you look at Mike Bardick at shortstop. He has been, since the middle of last season, he has been one of the best shortstops in all of baseball. And this was a Monday ball game. He makes a great catch there to rob Sandy Alomar Jr. of a base hit. But since the middle of last season, I mean, he has just performed brilliantly for the Oakland A's.
Bordick with a couple errors this year, third among American League shortstops at 172 chances. He made 10 errors total last year, but 4 of those came in the last 7 games of the season. And the new manager here of the Oakland A's, Art Howe, spent 5 years as the manager of the Houston Astros, the former infielder, third baseman. And he has the Oakland Athletics playing some inspired baseball to go 16-16 so far as they meet the Cleveland Indians, directed by Mike Hargrove. This is his 6th season after taking over in July of 1991. Last year's Sporting News American League Manager of the Year. And Kenny Lofton's going to lead it off. Lofton, the 28-year-old center fielder, and a great athlete. Reyes starts him with a pitch a little high, ball 1.
And talking to managers around the league, Kenny Lofton is probably the only player they think can really disrupt the game from the leadoff spot. There are a lot of players who play good and hit well from that spot, but he can disrupt the entire ball game.
He strokes it toward left center field. Young is over to cut it off, and Lofton is on his way for 2. He will make it with the double. Lofton's 5th double of the year. It comes on a 1-0 pitch, and the Indians have a man in scoring position.
Let's take a look at this pitch. You see the target by Steinbach is away. The ball is away up a little bit, and Lofton slams it into left center field. Anytime an outfielder has to run more than 5 steps, it's going to be a double for Kenny Lofton. And you can see the speed of Lofton, just beats it in the second base very easily.
So Lofton is aboard, and here is Julio Franco. Franco hitting .325. back in Cleveland. His first stint, you'll recall, with the Indians in the early to mid-'80s. 83 through 87. He's at first base now. And Franco takes a strike.
Along with Jack McDowell, I think this was the biggest addition that they made last year because he replaces Paul Sorrento as the first baseman, but he's also just a very, very good clutch hitter.
And one hopper out to second. Gates will make the play to first. Lofton goes to third. And let's go back to Gary in the studio.
Dwayne, we've been keeping people up to date on the 1-1 game. It's now in the 10th at Philadelphia. Ricky Gutierrez facing reliever Kenny Ryan. What a grab by Jimmy Eisenreich. It stays 1-1. The Phils now coming to bat in the bottom of the 10th. We'll let you know. Back to you.
And here Carlos Baerga sets to step in with Lofton at third and one out.
And that was a very good out by Julio Franco. He moved Lofton over to third base. Anytime you have a right-handed hitter hitting second who can move the runner along, it's a real plus for your ball club.
Baerga looks at a strike. He drove in 90 runs last year for the Indians. Switch hitting second baseman.
You can see the A's are conceding this run. They're playing back on both sides of the infield, so any ground ball will score Kenny Lofton.
Shot foul down the right side in front of Dave Nelson, the first base coach. And down into the bullpen. There's Nelson. Speaking of Kenny Lofton, who's aboard at third, Nelson has had a lot to do with his development since both Nelson and Lofton showed up in Cleveland. As a base runner and as an outfielder. An 0-2 count. Hopper on the left side, and Giambi, the third baseman's there, 2 gone.
Good pitching there by Reyes. He stayed in tight on Baerga the entire at bat, and he gets a jam job, so he keeps the ball on the infield. You see Steinbach set up on the inside, hits him right on the fist. Very good pitch. But that's what Reyes has to do. He cannot make mistakes in the middle of the plate. If he keeps it on the corners, he can be successful.
Well, here's Albert Bell. Bell, as you might expect, among the top 10 in hitting and runs batted in. Started the day with 12 home runs, second in the league in that category. And the first pitch to Bell is in there for a strike. He has a 10-game hitting streak as this game starts. See, they're better than 400 during that stretch. Reyes trying to pitch around the opening double by Lofton. And this is a little wide, and the count is 1-1.
Wayne, I want to make a quick point here. You made the point of saying that Davey Nelson has really helped Kenny Lofton. Well, there are a lot of people who steal bases, but there are only a few base stealers, and he's trying to learn to be a base stealer, not just a guy that steals bases.
And a ground ball back to the mound. Reyes will leave Lofton stranded at third. Bell out, pitcher first. Bottom of the first coming from Oakland. We have no score. In the 10 days leading up to this series, Oakland had a stretch of 10 games when they hit just .217, but they're batting .380 in the series against the Indians with an on-base percentage of .421. And Art Howe's lineup has Ernie Young leading off, followed by Gates and Giambi, who's done a great job. Mark McGuire, the cleanup hitter. Bill Plantier hitting fifth, followed by Terry Steinbach. Geronimo Baroa back in the lineup at DH after missing yesterday's game. Bordick will hit eighth, and Jose Herrera in right.
There you see Charles Nagy's sinker slider. Before they acquired Hershiser, Martinez, and McDowell, he was their ace. So he is still one of the top pitchers on this staff. And as long as he keeps the ball down, he's in good shape.
He just turned 29 last Sunday. A 16-game winner last year. And the first pitch to Ernie Young is in there for a strike. Young had a great spring for the A's, hit 8 home runs, and finally yesterday got his first home run of the year. Upstairs, so the count is 1-1. He was quick to point out, after hitting 8 home runs in the spring, he knew that when the regular season started, he was going to face the A pitching, as opposed to some of the young A, B, and C pitchers in the spring. Nice bunt, and Nagy off the mound to make the play. Charles Nagy retiring Young at first on the bunt attempt.
And you described it perfectly. A nice bunt and a nice play. I thought it was going to be a base hit, but Nagy got off the tee, disguised it very well, drops it down. No chance for Thome to make the play. But Nagy gets over there, fires to first base, and it retires Young. But 2 good plays there.
So Young is the first out. Nagy 5-2 lifetime against Oakland. Gates into this one, and a fly ball to center. Kenny Lofton backpedaling, has a lot of room, and makes the catch. 2 up, 2 down.
Kenny Lofton is a very good center fielder. Omar Vizquel, Gold Glove shortstop. But if there is an Achilles heel on this Cleveland Indians team, it's their everyday defense. And by that, I mean they will play good games on occasion, but over the course of the season, their defense is always suspect. And for a team that is as good as Cleveland, that's not acceptable, except you can make up for it with your big bats.
Speaking of big bats, here's Jason Giambi. He is 6th in the league in hitting, just 25 years old. He's shown some power and the ability to hit the ball to all fields, which helps the average. This one too low, ball 1. Giambi batting with the bases empty and 2 outs in the bottom of the first from Oakland. Lifts this one into center field, and Lofton, again with a lot of room, puts it away to retire the side. 1, 2, 3 go the A's. Eddie Murray will open the second inning for the Indians in a scoreless ball game. Construction continues even during the game here in the Coliseum at Oakland as we move into the second inning. The Indians and the A's are scoreless. A typically cool evening here. Clear skies.
Number 33, Eddie Murray.
And here's Eddie Murray, the designated hitter. Murray at 233, and the first part of this season was more or less an extended spring training for Murray. He lost a couple weeks because of a wrist injury in the spring. He has the 1 home run and 14 runs batted in. He goes after the first pitch from Reyes and sends Young back to the warning track, just a step on the track. Murray is out, number 1. Tomorrow night on ESPN, the Stanley Cup playoffs continue at 7:30 Eastern when the Penguins and the Rangers meet in Game 4. Pittsburgh leading that series 2-1 after a 3-2 win in New York last night. And on ESPN2 at 7:30, the Flyers and the Panthers meet. The Flyers lead that series 2-1. Manny Ramirez. And the pitch to him is inside, ball 1. Ramirez batting .265. Young right fielder. Now to play, and the count goes to 1-1.
It's interesting when you look at the lineup of the Cleveland Indians. They're not quite as awesome at this point of the season as they were last year, but they're still winning, and you have to credit the fact that they went out and got Jack McDowell, Orel Hershiser, Nagy. All these pitchers are pitching better, and they're a better ball club for that. They're They can win without just beating you up now. They can beat you 1-0, or they can beat you 2-1.
Counts a ball and 2 strikes to Ramirez. Kind of an interesting ball club. Here's a team that won 100 games last year. Emerged as American League champs. So after not winning the World Series, they were so dominant in the American League, and a lot of people thought, well, they might go ahead and win the World Series. So you think, well, this team will come back the following year with a mission, and indeed they do. But there was some thought that they were so dominant last year that even though they didn't win the World Series, there might be, I don't know if you want to call it complacency. And it doesn't seem to be the case so far. Fly ball right center. And over to make this catch, Herrera from right. 2 gone.
Really, that's a sign of a good team, Dwayne. A lot of teams in the past, they have a good year, and the next year they come back, they start off slowly simply because they had to start from ground zero again. When you win a championship or win an American League championship, and you have to come back next year, you start at 0-0 like you did the year before. Sometimes it's difficult for teams to get started, and they usually start off slowly and then pick up momentum as the season goes. But you have to give credit to these guys because they came out of the box pot.
Jim Thome. Thome, the third baseman. A ball, no strikes to count, hitting .279. He has a good eye up there. This one is down. He'll draw a lot of walks and work the count. Batting with the bases empty and 2 outs. Back in the lineup. He did not play yesterday against the left-hander. 3 balls and no strikes.
Thome's kind of a throwback to the sluggers of the past, Dwayne, in that he stands and he gets his hips out of the way first, and then he swings the bat through the zone. Most of your modern hitters try to use their hips to pull the bat through. He gets his out of the way and lets his strength take over after that.
Swinging 3-0, and he fouls it out of play.
The real characteristic of his swing is the fact that his hips open so quickly and they try to get out of the way so his bat can pull through. And that's kind of the way sluggers of the past swung the bat. See a lot of different batting styles now. You see a lot of people diving into the plate. Thome doesn't do that.
He's up in the count, 3-1, facing Carlos Reyes. Reyes comes right in there with strike 2. Full count. And as you mentioned, Reyes doesn't throw very hard. He'll try to mix it up and use that changeup. He threw a good changeup to get Bell to end the first and leave Lofton at third.
He really doesn't have an outstanding pitch, but a lot of good pitches. Changeup.
And he changes on Thome and gets him on strikes. 1, 2, 3 go the Indians. Mark McGwire will open the Oakland half of the second. We are scoreless.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Glidden, the company that makes the world a colorful place, and by Franklin, the official batting glove of Major League Baseball.
Those fellows are wearing hard hats out there, and for good reason. Not only are they working a construction site, but they have Mark McGwire set to lead off the bottom of the second inning. And McGwire, there you go. It's hazard pay. McGwire has hit a couple shots in batting practice, unbelievable shots. And yesterday, he parked one just to the left of the flag in center field. A towering drive. It's this one on a line to third, in and out of the glove of Thome, who recovers in time to get McGwire at first. That's the first out in the second. Let's go back to Gary Miller.
Dwayne, we've been keeping people posted on the great pitchers duel. 1-1 in the 10th. Bases loaded now against the Astros. Jim Eisenreich, who had made a great catch in the top of the inning to rob Ricky Gutierrez, knocks in Mark Whitten, who had been hit with a pitch. So bases loaded single, and Jim Fregosi's Phillies pull it out 2-1 over Houston. Back to you.
Well, the Astros miss a chance to add to their lead, their one-game lead in the National League's Central Division. Here's Phil Plantier. This one is too low, ball 1. Plantier had a couple hits and a couple runs batted in yesterday, and he needed them, hitting just 160. The Athletics hoping to get his big bat going. Plantier hitting behind McGuire. Ahead in the count. Two balls and a strike. We're in the second with no score. Charles Nagy pitching for the Indians. 2-2 now on Plantier. The load of lumber, and it doesn't come from the Indians bench. Now the 2-2. Sharply hit, but foul.
Very close down the line there. It does not have to hit in fair territory. Just cross the bag at some point in fair territory, and it hooked. Just missed the right corner of the bag.
Richie Garcia, the crew chief, on the call. Julio Franco at first. He said he knew it was foul all the time. Now the 2-2. And the count is full.
That's the changeup Nagy has been working on. Sinker, slider are his two basic pitches, but he has been working on a changeup.
And the 3-2, a base hit. Plantier picks up the first Oakland hit. A single into center.
Because Plantier has such a uppercut swing, you will never see it like a solid line drive you see come off the bat of other hitters. So watch, this will have a loop in it. Watch how he starts down and he swings up on the ball, as you can see there. Now look at the loop. He'll drop his hand, swing up. Look at that. That's really an uppercut, and that's one of the reasons that Plantier has never hit for a high average in the major leagues. He's hit some home runs in the past, but you're not going to hit for a high average when you swing up on the ball like he does.
Terry Steinbach, the veteran catcher, down to third. Thome across to Franco, who digs it out for the second out, and Plantier moves into second base. Now Steinbach is out third to first.
We almost saw the problem that Thome has from third base. He'll get in front of the ball and knock it down, but his throws quite often are erratic, to say the least, but he's really worked hard at third base, and he's a guy that really works hard at his craft. I'm a real admirer of Jim Thome, and I think he's gotten better each year defensively.
Here's Baroa, Geronimo Baroa, the designated hitter. This one too low, ball one. Baroa got a bunch of runs batted in early this year, just 2, however, in his last 14 games. 23 overall, 1 behind Jason Giambi. 1 ball, 1 strike. Runner at second base is Plantier, the left fielder. Baroa drove in 88 runs last year. Too close, 2-1. And it's really a challenge for him not to swing the bat. He loves to swing that bat. He has a man in scoring position. It'll take a 2-out hit to get him home. The count goes to 3-1.
He seems like he's not sure if they're going to try to get him out, because Bordick behind him is in a slump, and he's not sure that they're going to come after him. He looked like he wasn't even ready to swing the bat on that pitch.
Breaking to the bag at second is Vizquel. A turn, but no throw back there. Plantier returns to the bag.
The most difficult time a hitter that hits down the lineup has is when he's not sure whether they're going to try to get him out or not, or pitch around him, or try to get him to chase pitches.
He goes after this one and sends it into center. Lofton backing up, approaching the track, and makes the grab to retire the Oakland A's in the second inning. No runs with a man left. We're headed to the third. Indians and the A's, no score. Dennis Martinez taking a break from his charting chores. Indians have tomorrow off, and they will open a series against the Angels on Friday in Anaheim, and he'll do the pitching for the Indians against the Angels.
Well, he got his 236th win the other day. He's only one behind Juan Marichal for leadership for Latin players in the Major League, so he's approaching in the Hall of Fame statistic there.
And Sandy Alomar approaches the plate to open the third. Alomar, Vizquel, and Lofton against Carlos Reyes. Reyes' first pitch is in there for a strike.
Alomar's had a good season, so, starts the season simply because he's been healthy. Had a 17-game hitting streak. He's been able to play most of the ball games. He is a guy that they know when he's in the lineup, he's going to give him quality catching behind the plate, and then he adds something with his bat.
Down on the count right now, 2 strikes. He had a 17-game hitting streak earlier. It was stopped up in Seattle. A ball and 2 strikes. Cleveland on a 10-game road trip. They won 3 of 4 in Seattle and have dropped the first 2 games here in Oakland. Skied into center. Ernie Young has it for the out. 1 gone. We'll see the same Indian Ball Club this week on ESPN's Sunday night game of the week when they take on the Angels in Anaheim. Albert Bell, Jim Edmonds leading the Angels. So they'll be wrapping up. The Indians will be wrapping up a long road trip Sunday night here on ESPN against the Angels.
Last year, about the middle of the season, we were trying to decide which team was the best offensive team in the American League. The Angels were scoring as many runs. They were not hitting as many home runs, but I think the Cleveland Indians won out with their lineup. Angels have a lot of good young players in their lineup, young hitters. But the Cleveland Indians finally won out over the course of the entire season.
It could be an interesting series with those 2 teams matching. This one inside.
Well, the interesting point there is that the Angels, so far their pitching has not come through as well as they had expected, the 3 left-handers, but on any given day they're capable of shutting down any ball club.
Ground ball and a stop by Gates, but he cannot make the throw. Vizquel, a sharply hit ball up the middle. Gates, nice job of knocking it down, but could not make the play.
Well, that's what speed will do to you, though. Gates, if there would have been a slower runner going down the line, he would have taken time and made a good throw. But because he knows Vizquel runs well, watch how quickly he tries to get up and get the ball out. He knows he can't take a lot of time, and that causes him to fumble it there. A right-handed hitter hit that ball, he probably would have had time to get up on his knees and make the throw. But you see there, he's hurrying because Vizquel gets down the line quickly.
So Vizquel has what turns out to be an infield hit. He draws the throw over there. Kenny Lofton's at the plate.
When you're an infielder, you have a little clock in your head, 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds. If you haven't gotten rid of the ball after 2.5 seconds, you're not going to be able to get the runner if he's a left-handed base runner, left-handed hitter that gets down the line pretty well, because they're going to get down there 4 to 4.2. So you have to have that little clock in your head. Even on double plays, it goes 1 second, 2 seconds, and you know when you have to have gotten rid of the ball in order to get those runners at first base.
1-0 pitch. Lofton takes it off the plate for ball 2. Runner at first, Vizquel, 1 out. We're in the third, no score. Oakland trying to sweep Cleveland. They won the first 2 games. They had lost 13 straight to the Indians until the win in the opening game of this series. 2 balls and a strike to count.
Vizquel distracted Lofton there. Lofton thought he was going because he made a big bluff, and the way to help the runner if he's stealing a base is to square around to bunt because that keeps the catcher back.
Over to first. Vizquel is back in. And the A's have a pretty good combination right now for their battery of Reyes and Steinbach. Steinbach last year drew out 35% of the runners attempting to steal and is right on that mark again this year. Fly ball toward right center. Herrera is there to make the catch for the out. So Lofton is the second out. Vizquel hangs on at first. He'll be there with Julio Franco stepping in.
And you see Davey Nelson talking to Vizquel. As you mentioned, Davey Nelson was a good base stealer in his day, and he passes along little tidbits to these guys about what he sees in the pitcher's motion that gives away where he's going, whether he's coming to first base or going to the plate.
Franco with a man at first. He grounded out in the first. And the pitch is a strike. Franco had a 9-game hitting streak in among those last 12 games there. That came to an end in Seattle. But over 400 hitting in 11 of his last 12. From this pitch, count is 1-1.
When you were talking to me before the game about how well the Indians hit against right-handed pitching, and on my comment was that I think it's most teams are going to hit better against right-handed pitching because they see more right-handers. But as you mentioned, the Indians kind of kill right-handed pitching.
Yes, they do. They're 5-4 against lefties, but love that right-handed pitching. And you're right. Most people see right-handers a lot more, and as a result, more familiar and have a better winning percentage perhaps against them. The Indians seem to really go to town. There's a ball, and the count goes to 2-1. And they've added the potent bat of Franco to their lineup this year. A team average of 290 coming into the game tonight for the Indians.
At one point, I think last year, their first 7 hitters were hitting 300 or better.
This one is chopped foul, so the count is 2-2. Well, the game plan for Reyes is to keep that hitter's timing off balance. They say his fastball will top out maybe in the low 80s.
Well, as long as there's some movement on it, remember, it's not really how hard you throw all the time, but it's how much your ball moves. There are some hard throwers in baseball, but they have straight fastballs.
Runner's gone. The pitch is a ball, and the throw is not in time. Vizquel picks up his 8th stolen base of the year.
Steinbach had no chance to throw Vizquel out. He had a great jump. He was actually moving a split second before Reyes went to the plate. See, he's just a split second before. I mean, he took a big step, and Reyes did not cut him down, didn't stop him. So no chance, as you can see there, for Steinbach to throw him out.
So a steal into scoring position. Full count to Franco, who lines it over the head of McGuire toward the corner and right, cut off by Herrera. Vizquel will score on the base hit by Franco. So the Indians steal and hit their way to their first run of the night. 1-0 Cleveland.
It's a good dimension to have. A lot of teams think of the Indians as just a power-hitting ball club that hits the ball out of the ballpark all the time. But when you have someone like Franco, this guy's a good hitter. That's ball 4. I mean, that ball's not even close. But he is such a good hitter, and he goes the other way so well, he just takes it and rifles it down the right field line.
So Franco's aboard with his 25th run batted in. And here's Carlos Baerga. Strike 1. Baerga popped out his first time. couple of base hits and a stolen base. And the Indians have a run. Berger out in front. Fouls it. 0-2.
There's one trait that most of the Cleveland Indians have, and that is that hitters have. They hold the bat high. You saw Franco with the bat up high. They keep the bat above the strike zone at all times, which makes them real good high fastball hitters. Most hitters have trouble with the high fastball, but these Cleveland Indian hitters can handle the high fastball.
The 0-2, a broken bat roller to the right side for Gates with a toss to McGuire, retiring the Indians. They pick up a run on a couple hits. We're headed into the bottom of the third. 1-0 Indians.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by Lennox. For the finest in home heating and cooling, Lennox. One less thing to worry about. And by Glidden, the company that makes the world a colorful place.
Well, the Indians have some fans following them to the West Coast on this 10-game swing. Meanwhile, the Athletics come into bat in the bottom of the third, down by a run, with 2 wins already in their pockets in this series. And they'll send their shortstop, Mike Bordick, to the plate. Bordick, Herrera, and Young to bat against Charles Nagy. And the pitch is in there for a strike. Bordick at 250. He has been struggling recently. Nothing out of his last 17 to see his average slide to the 250 mark. A ball and a strike. 264 last year and had a little pop. 8 home runs. Down to third. Glove by Thome. His throws in time. 1 out here in the third. We'll go back to Gary Miller.
Dwayne, take it to Arlington. The Rangers have won 4 straight coming in, facing the Blue Jays off Eric Hansen. Will Clark knocks in his second run of the game. Doesn't bring home Darrell Hamilton. They're up 3-1 at that point. It's now 4-2. The Rangers have 2 on in the bottom of the 8th as they try to win their 5th straight. Back to you.
The Rangers actually started the day with the best record in the American League. The Indians started this series with the best record, but they've dropped 2, and the Rangers now riding that 4-game winning streak Gary mentioned. 21-11. First pitch to Herrera is a strike. Herrera was recalled Sunday from Huntsville when Scott Brocious was injured, and that's a big loss for the A's. Line drive into center field, and Lofton has to make a leaping catch. He was playing shallow and shaded toward left center field for Herrera, the left-handed hitter, and that ball almost took off on him.
He was playing very shallow. I mean, that ball was hit like a shot. And Lofton timed it perfectly.
The batter,
And made the catch.
Ernie Young.
See, he knows where it is at all times. He's under control. Remember now, he used to play basketball. He probably didn't even, that's a half a jump.
Yeah, he wasn't skying at all.
No, he wasn't skying. That wasn't his slam dunk move.
Ernie Young. And the first pitch is a ball. He won that slam dunk competition one year in college. The 6th man at Arizona.
And the first man in Cleveland.
This one is too low. A 2-ball, no strike count. We mentioned the injury to Brocious. He fractured a forearm in Kansas City Sunday when he was hit by a pitch thrown by Mark Gubicza. Brocious is off to a great start. Down to third again, and Thome will make this play. 1, 2, 3, go the A's. We are through 3 innings, headed to the 4th. Albert Bell leads off the 4th for Cleveland. Indians leading 1-0. We're in Oakland tonight where the Athletics have reached the 500 mark, 16-16. That's Scott Brocious sitting, and you can see the right hand. He was injured Sunday, hit by that Mark Gubicza pitch. He was hitting .351, and this pitch took him out of action. 8 home runs and 21 runs batted in, so that's a big loss for this young Oakland Athletics ball club.
Left fielder, Albert Bell.
We're headed into the 4th with Oakland trailing 1-0, and Albert Bell leads off for Cleveland. Bell, Murray, and then Manny Ramirez. Bell was out pitcher first. Reyes got him on a changeup to leave Lofton at third in the first. Start of the night at 3:36. And this one is down, ball 1. Reyes has given up 3 hits and a run. A run driven home by Franco in the third. 2 balls, no strikes. Well, as you know, second in the MVP balloting to Mo Vaughn last year. With a strike. 2-1.
A lot of controversy. A lot of people thought Bell should have won. I don't think anyone could say that Bell shouldn't have won, but I don't think they could say Mo Vaughn shouldn't have won. It's one of those years where both players did a good job.
This one is foul.
And it's happened a lot in the past, you know, over the course of, you know, the balloting for MVP. There's usually a lot of controversy. A lot of people felt that Dante Bichette should have won in the National League last year. So a little different, you know, everyone has their own opinion.
Well, with 50 home runs and 52 doubles, the first man in Major League history to accomplish that, to hit 50 in both those categories.
I don't think there's any doubt he had the most outstanding season, but the most valuable player is a little different award than having the best season of anyone.
And a foul ball up the right side, holding the count full to 3 balls, 2 strikes. He's leading off the 4th. Well, it was a controversial call, and as we know, he's been something of a controversial figure.
Yes.
You can't ignore that had something to do with perhaps him finishing second in the ballot. And he is out on strikes. So Reyes got him with a change the first time, went to 3-2, and throws this one by him.
Well, it's a high pitch up and out of the strike zone, but again, he has thrown him some change-ups and off-speed pitches, which makes you wait just a little longer, and so you're late on that high fastball. And watch, he's just a little late on that pitch because he's looking for something off speed.
You know, John, and that's the fun of watching a pitcher like Carlos Reyes work. He doesn't throw hard, uses his changeup. He got Bell with a changeup the first time. Here's Murray. Eddie Murray, a ball to no strikes. And even though he doesn't throw hard, he gets to a point where he can actually throw the ball by a powerful hitter like Albert Bell. Murray out in front, fouls this one. The count is 1-1.
Well, the art of pitching is really keeping the hitter off balance. And if you have a 95-mile-an-hour fastball, you can keep him off balance that way. If you do not have that type of a fastball, you change speeds. You throw a little slower, and then you throw your fastball so it looks like it's 90 miles an hour, and that's what Reyes does well.
Murray bounces this one foul, 1-2.
Keeps you out front, keeps you off balance with that change-up and slow curve or slow slider. And then every once in a while, he'll turn the high fastball loose.
You'll sometimes hear hitters talk about a pitcher who doesn't throw hard enough to hit. It's too slow to hit.
I've never found one of those myself, but I've heard guys say that.
1-2 the count. Into the dirt. That squares it at 2-2.
In fact, the guy that hit in front of me a lot of years in Cincinnati, Pete Rose, used to yell at him, "You don't throw hard enough to hit," while he's on his way back to the dugout. Now, I'm on my way to the plate, and he's yelling at the guy. I had to calm him down quite often.
It really hurt your career, didn't it?
Can't ever get hurt hitting behind Pete.
Well, a full count again to Eddie Murray. Reyes went 3-2 to Bell, struck him out. Now he's 3-2 to Eddie Murray.
And Bell, he threw Bell the fastball. I don't think he'll come at Murray with the fastball. He put that in the back of Murray's mind.
And he changes up on him and strikes him out.
So that's what he does. He puts in the back of your mind that he will throw the fastball by you, so you can't sit there and look for the changeup. So quite naturally, he'll throw the changeup. I mean, this is beautiful pitching because he got Bell with the high fastball, which keeps Eddie Murray honest, and then he throws him the changeup, and he's out in front.
2 outs with the bases empty. The heart of this order, Bell and Murray out on strikes. And here's the young slugger, Manny Ramirez. This one low, ball 1.
I made the point of how most of the Indians hold their bats high. I think that comes from the former hitting instructor they had there, Jose Morales. When they all started to blossom, it was because of Morales' teaching. He likes to keep the bat above the strike zone and attack it from there, which I think is great.
Ramirez skies one into right. Herrera is there to make the catch, and 1, 2, 3 go the Indians. Mark McGwire will bat third in the bottom of the 4th in this one-run game.
Tonight's game is being...
And we're back in Oakland with Joe Morgan, Dwayne Stats, and Sandy Alderson, the Executive Vice President and General Manager of the Oakland A's, has joined us in the booth. Brent Gates leads it off and takes the first pitch for high. It'll be Gates, Giambi, and then McGwire. In a 1-0 ball game, Cleveland picking up a run in the 3rd. Gates flied out to center his first time. There's a strike, and the count is 1-1. Sandy, things are looking pretty good here in this series against the Cleveland Indians.
Well, we played much better than anyone, I think, did anticipate over the first month, and these 2 games have been nice for us.
It's interesting because, you know, I live here, so I read, and when players started leaving or you traded Stottlemyre, I was always wondering how well this team was going to do. But I guess the first and foremost question, Art Howe was a teammate of mine in Houston, and I have a lot of respect for him. And I was just wondering, how did you settle on Art Howe? Because I know you interviewed quite a few people during the course of your search.
The 1-2 is foul.
Well, we started with a list of about 50 candidates. We tried to think of almost everyone who was a conceivable possibility, and then narrowed it down to 10 or 11, interviewed that number, and from there it moved pretty quickly.
Back to the hill, and Nagy makes the play, and the toss to first for the out.
We knew the kind of club we'd have. It'd be young and going through a rebuilding process of sorts, and so we looked for guys who had that kind of experience, and certainly Art jumps right out at you after his time in Houston, getting the club that he had there to a very competitive level before he left, and so he moved right to the top of our list.
Here's Jason Giambi. Here's one of those young players you spoke of, and so far he's had a great year for you.
Played very well, had to move to first base during spring training because of McGwire's injury. Did very well there, and has now moved over to third and hasn't missed a beat.
He drives it toward left center field. Lofton and Bell cannot get it. One hop into the wall, and Giambi's on his way to second with the double. That's his 10th double of the year already, to go with 4 home runs.
Well, Nagy throws a sinker that usually runs away from the left-handed hitter. Let's see where this ball actually ends up. See, that's a little slider, and it stays down, and he drives it into left center field, but he really hit that ball hard. That's one of the complaints here, Stan, that the ball doesn't travel as well here at night as it does in some of the other parks around the league.
Yeah, it's changing a little bit with the construction in center field. It's blocking a lot of the wind that we typically get in the evening, so most of the players think the ball is carrying much better now than it did previously.
There's Mark McGwire taking the first pitch, although McGwire seems to be excluded from that effect.
Well, he doesn't need to carry, although he hit an absolute bomb here yesterday, which I had never seen before. The distance it went in center field was unique.
I was talking to Art Howe before the game, and he said there's been 2 times this year where everybody on the bench kind of looked at themselves and jumped up and said, wow. And the first time was when McGwire hit the ball on the roof in Detroit, and yesterday. He said it was unbelievable when he put a charge in that ball yesterday.
Well, originally they called it about 425, and we all laughed at that.
There's ball 2.
Well, it's over the 400-foot mark.
Well, it landed above the batter's eye, up in that cement area that is above the batter's eye, and just to the left of the American flag. It was an absolute shock. Never seen one like that before here.
He's batting with a man at second, 2 on the count. That's going to be high for ball 3. Now the count goes to 3-1.
We're fortunate to get McGuire back a little bit earlier than we originally thought we would, and just about the time we got him back, 3 or 4 games later, Brocious went down. So it's been tough keeping that offense tuned up.
Now the 3-1 from Nagy, and he walks McGuire.
Not to bring up a sore subject, but how much effect do you think the fact that you had to open the season in Vegas, what effect did that have on the players?
Well, there are a lot of players, and I think among the staff, people that believe it actually benefited us, because of being a young club and being a club that had come from different origins, coming together early in the season, it became much easier to do that on the road. Everybody was together all the time, and it was something that had to be overcome. And so a lot of the players think it was actually a benefit.
Here's Phil Plantier taking a pitch upstairs. Runners first and second with 1 out. The construction going on here at the Oakland Coliseum. And I guess, Sandy, it's anybody's guess as to the eventual effect and future of this franchise in terms of location. Fly ball toward left. Bell is there and will make the catch for the out. How early in the stage of where this ball club will play, whether it's here or someplace else in the area, what kind of thinking is going on?
Well, our ownership, I think, is committed to playing here in the Bay Area, and we will do everything we can to remain here in Oakland at this ballpark. And that's why we fought so hard over the last few months to try and make this park as good as it can be for baseball. And so that's our goal. A lot of people have focused on our attendance the last couple of weeks, but people forget we've only played 2 weekend games here. We've had 1 Saturday, 1 Sunday. The team is young and just creating an identity. We've got the stadium under construction, but we knew this would be the situation, and we just got to build from here.
Terry Steinbach up there with a strike to count. A foul ball, 0-2. 2 men on with 2 outs. Cleveland picking up a run in the 3rd to take a 1-0 lead, and that's the score here in the bottom of the 4th. A 2-strike count. Off the plate end, a ball and 2 strikes. It's hard to put a timetable on rebuilding a team, but what's your feeling this early into the rebuilding process?
Well, we think we've got some good young players here now, and we think we've got some very good players at AAA and AA. So I don't believe we're that far away. I think we can be very competitive in the next couple of years.
Up and away, 2-2. So all of that, good news for Oakland fans. You want to play here in this ballpark for a long time, and in a couple of years, you anticipate that you'll be competitive and in the middle of a race.
Yeah, hopefully it'll come together like it did in the late 80s, because we faced a very similar situation in the mid-80s, and it came together later on.
A swing and a miss by Terry Steinbach to retire the side. Sandy, we appreciate the visit.
My pleasure.
We are through 4. It's 1-0 Cleveland. Here on Wednesday Night Baseball, the Indians lead the Athletics 1-0 as we move into the top of the 5th from Oakland. At stage 9 of the Tour de Pont tomorrow at 5:30 Eastern on ESPN. American Lance Armstrong continues to lead through stage 8, which was run earlier today, but Frenchman Pascal Hervé cut 55 seconds from his lead, and the always dangerous Tony Rominger lurks in 3rd place. The Tour de Pont coming up tomorrow on ESPN. Fifth inning. Now, that's dangerous out there.
They do get hazardous pay, don't they?
I hope so. I would certainly hope so. Almost as hazardous, I guess, as facing Randy Johnson.
Yeah.
Particularly in the early stages of his career when his control wasn't quite as good. Here's Jim Thome. The pitch is high, ball one. Thome struck out his first time. Reyes got him on a changeup. One of two swinging third strikes. 3 strikeouts total for Reyes. That's in there for a strike. 1-1. The Indian run came in the third. That was driven home by Julio Franco. There's a strike. So the count is 1-2, and the Athletics continue to get good pitching against what is arguably the best lineup in baseball.
Well, you can see Reyes paints the inside corner. Thome thought it was off the plate inside. And he's right there with every pitch so far. Let's sit back.
2 balls and 2 strikes. Oakland won the first game 5-3 and won yesterday 8-4. So that allowed 7 runs, but in the first 2 games, just 3 earned runs against this lineup, and the run tonight, the Indians scored in the third. That's a fair ball. Down toward the bullpen. Herrera's going to have to come and get it. Thome's on his way to second with the double. A leadoff double, just fair for Thome here in the 5th inning.
We saw one ball just barely hooked foul down the right field line, and this ball here goes right over the corner of the bag and hits in the foul territory, but you'll get a look at it. This pitch here, now watch, right over the corner of the bag, even though it hits in foul territory after it passes the bag, it doesn't matter. It's kind of like a pitch. Once it crosses home plate, it's where it's called a strike. Once it crosses the bag is where you call it from.
Sandy Alomar, 0 for 1. Taps this one foul, strike 1. Alomar out after that changeup. Little piece of it foul.
It's interesting. We saw the experience of Julio Franco, you know, going the other way when he was hitting with a runner at second with no one out. Let's see how Sandy Alomar handles this. It doesn't look like he's going the other way. He's trying to drive him in. That's the experience factor that Franco brings to this ball club. Lofton led off with a double. He had a ground ball to the second baseman to move Lofton to third with less than 2 outs. He didn't score because Baerga popped up and Bell grounded back to the pitcher, but he did his job.
Now 2 strikes to count on Alomar. Came into this game hitting a little better than 150 for this road trip. This is the 7th game of the road trip for Cleveland.
Unfortunately for hitters, Dwayne, you have a long hitting streak, and when it stops, you usually go into a mild slump. You know, that's the trick, is to stay out of that slump. Remember, Joe DiMaggio, after his hitting streak was broken, he started another one the next day.
1 ball, 2 strikes. Leadoff double by Thome in the 5th. Reyes 27. He was 4-6 last year.
Good pitch.
Alomar is out on strikes. Strikeout number 4.
And what Reyes did was he kept all the pitches inside, even the off-speed pitches. He did not let Alomar go the other way. See, this pitch here runs way inside, and Alomar is late on it, ties him up. Fastball running, tailing fastball. See how he kind of pulls his arms in trying to get to that pitch.
Here's Omar Vizquel. 1-1 to the Indian shortstop. Vizquel reached on the infield hit in the 3rd inning and scored when Franco singled into right. Vizquel picking up his 8th stolen base along the way. Bunts this one foul, and the count goes to 1-1.
And obviously he is not bunting to sacrifice Thome to third base. He is trying to beat the bunt out and advance Thome at the same time. So this is not a sacrifice situation.
The Indians have had 4 hits, including a couple of extra base hits. Ball 2. 2-1. Vizquel's breakdown against lefties and righties. And Reyes goes down 3 balls and a strike in the count. There's Thome at second.
I think you have to make Vizquel hit the ball. You do not want to face Lofton with the runner in scoring position.
And a strike to run the count to 3-2. Now the top of the batting order due next in Lofton.
Well, you're going to have to face him anyway, but you don't want to face him without any place to put him. Lowers your margin for error if you have a runner at first, runners at first and second.
Now the 3-2. And ball 4. First walk given up by Carlos Reyes. Vizquel on for the 2nd straight time.
Well, Reyes is trying to make a perfect pitch knee high and away on Vizquel. And you see the target by Steinbach. He throws it down and in, actually. So he missed his target completely.
So now he'll face Kenny Lofton, who not only has been a pretty good leadoff man for the Indians, but he's been tough with men in scoring position. Bats with men at first and second, and 1 out in the 5th against Reyes. Ball 1. Pitch down and in.
This puts the A's infield in a very difficult position. It's almost impossible to double Lofton unless he hits the ball hard near the bag at second base. But it also forces Mark McGwire and Jason Giambi at the corners to play in tight. That opens up a lot of space between the middle infielders because they're playing closer to the bag for a double play. So McGuire's in tight at first, and Giambi's tight at third. That's tough infield alignment for the A's.
This one's going to be out of play, a foul ball. Lofton coming into play tonight, 14 out of 30 with men in scoring position.
I've always believed you have to know your hitters well and know who will try to drive in the runs and who will go ahead and bunt. You know Vizquel will bunt in these situations, but Lofton usually tries to drive in the runs. And I said that to say that I would not play my first baseman and my third baseman in that shallow, because again it gives him a bigger hole on the right side and a big hole on the left side. See how tight they are at first and third. Move them back at least a step behind the bag.
And the count has gone to 2-1 on Lofton. Too low. Dug out by Steinbach, and the count is 3 balls and a strike. So a tough spot for Reyes.
It may not matter here where they're playing if he doesn't throw a strike.
Franco following Lofton in the Indians lineup. And Lofton draws the walk. So back-to-back bases on balls given up. The bases are loaded with Franco coming up. Franco has driven home the game's only run.
And remember I talked about how the hitters on the Indians hold their bats above the strike zone and go and get the ball wherever it's pitched. Now watch, see that pitch is, his hands are high and he just goes down and gets it. It's easier to throw the bat from that position at the ball than it is if you have your hands down and have to try to raise them for a high fastball. You keep your hands above the strike zone, it's always easier to control the strike zone.
Bob Cook, the pitching coach, out there talking with Carlos Reyes. Buck departs with the bases loaded, and Franco coming to the plate, and 1 out.
Again, Franco's a very smart hitter, so he's going to try to get a ball that he knows he can get in the air and not hit a ground ball and hit into a double play.
A double and 2 walks have loaded the bases. Did he go? Yes, says Garcia down at first. Reyes and a big jam in the 5th. Right-hander out of Tampa. In a spot. Franco lifts it into center. Young is there to make the catch. Thome tags and will score. Vizquel is on his way to 3rd. So Franco delivers the 2nd run batted into the ninth on a sacrifice fly to center.
That should have been his first priority, is to make sure he got the ball in the air and not hit a ground ball, which he does. And Franco, again, is a very smart hitter. See, his hands are high, and he just makes sure he gets the ball in the air. Good swing there by Franco. He didn't get a base hit, but he did his job. Now it's a 2-0 lead. You see all the teammates congratulating him, because that should be his first priority. Get the ball out of the infield, not necessarily just to get a base hit.
Here's Carlos Baerga. 2 outs with a run home. Runners at 1st and 3rd. Lofton, the runner at 1st. Vizquel over at 3rd.
Well, he has handled Baerga very well in this ball game. He's pitched him away, and then he's jammed him twice. He broke his bat once, got a little weak pop up to 3rd base. Now, Baerga is also a smart hitter, so he knows how he got him out, and he'll be trying to protect against the inside pitch this at bat.
Reyes stepping off. Vizquel had bluffed a little start down the line from 3rd. So Reyes stepped off the rubber. And it's Lofton at 1st.
And the question here is, what do you do if you're Lofton? Do you go ahead and steal the base, and then that'll close up the hole on the right side, or do you stay there and leave that hole there for Baerga? This is some of the things that have to be decided during the course of the season. And sometimes Hargrove may have him stay there. Other times he may want him to run. I think you have to, the situation dictates what you do. You don't always stay there, and you do not always run.
Well, the Indians have their speedsters on the bases with Vizquel and Lofton, forcing the hand here of Reyes a little bit and dividing his attention. No count yet on Baerga, who lines it into right for a base hit. Vizquel scores. Lofton's on his way to 3rd, and it's 3-0 Cleveland.
And that's why you stay there. That opened up that hole for him to hit into. If he was on 2nd base, McGuire would have been back and probably would have caught that ball. So there are times to steal bases and times when you stay there to help your teammates. This pitch here is away a little bit. He jammed him the entire ball game, so he tries to go away, and you can see Lofton has to wait and let that ball go past him. But he did open up the hole on the right side by staying there, and that's good baseball there by the Cleveland Indians.
So the Indians have a 3-0 lead. That's Mark Aker. He just started to throw in the bullpen. Harry Steinbach went out there to take up a little time on the mound before the conference was broken up by plate umpire Terry Kraft. Reyes facing Albert Bell. Bell is 0 for 2. Out pitcher first and struck out in the 4th. In the dirt, blocked by Steinbach. Well, Reyes got Bell on a changeup in the 1st and then threw a fastball by him in the 4th inning. And he's got a big out to try to get here in the 5th inning with his teammates already trailing 3-0. Upstairs. The count is 2-0. Bell with a 10-game hitting streak. Couple of walks in the inning. A leadoff double by Thome. And a drive down the left field line. Is it fair? It is, and it's gone. Bell lines a home run, a 3-run shot, his 13th home run of the year.
Well, Reyes hugged the slider. He got it up, and Bell drilled it down the left field line. It was hooking, but not quick enough for the Oakland A's.
A 3-run home run for Bell. He now has 30 runs batted in to go with the 13 home runs.
Well, take a look at this pitch. It's a breaking ball. It doesn't do much, and it's out over the plate. He pulls it. I guess it could have been a little off-speed changeup, but it looked more like a breaking ball when he released it, but not much break on it.
6-0. Now Eddie Murray drills one into right field, catchable for Jose Herrera, and that retires the side. But the Indians send 8 men to the plate. They cap the inning on a 3-run home run by Bell. We go into the bottom of the 5th. 6-0 Cleveland. Six nothing as we go into the bottom of the 5th. A 5-run inning for the Indians, and Bell capped it with that 3-run home run of Carlos Reyes. Geronimo Barroa leads off and hits one sharply. Diving stop by Vizquel, and he cannot get him. The ball loose. Barroa is on his way to second and will wind up there. Great stop by Vizquel. The throw to first got away, and up to second base goes Barroa.
Well, the umpire, Rich Garcia, at first base had already called him safe, so he did beat the play, so it's a base hit. And it'll depend on who they give the error to. Nice diving stop there by Vizquel. He comes up, he fires. He looks like he gets it there. Franco is stretched out, but it was a little toward the right field side. But you can see Garcia was already calling him safe, so it should be a base hit. And an error. I don't know who they give the error to.
Here's Mike Bordick. Vizquel came into this game without an error this year. He was charged with an error in the Seattle series on a ball that he ranged to the first base side of second base on, and then couldn't make the play and was originally charged with an error. They later changed that. So he came into this game the only regular shortstop without an error. But they're going to give him one on this play.
And again, I mean, it's a close call there because it looked like the ball got there in the air, and Franco tried to stretch out and get it, and it hit off his glove.
Man at second base with nobody out. 1-1 the count to Bordick, who's trying to shake out of a slump. He's behind, a ball and 2 strikes. Bordick grounded to third his first time around, and that gives him a nothing out of his last 18. Charles Nagy pitching for the Indians, and strike 3 is called. Nagy gets Bordick looking, and that's the first strikeout, second strikeout for the Cleveland right-hander. He got Steinbach swinging in the 4th, and now Bordick looking here in the 5th.
Well, he sets up right on the outside corner. That ball runs back a little bit, and you can see Terry Kraft says strike 3. Bordick thought the ball was going to be away, and it was off the plate about halfway to the plate, but it had a little tail on it and came back over the outside corner.
Here's Jose Herrera. Pitch drops too low, ball 1. Nagy came in with an earned run average of better than 4.5, 454. And a couple of rough outings, but overall he's made 6 starts, and Mike Hargrove thinks he's been perhaps the most consistent starting pitcher the Indians have had this year in terms of the way he's thrown the ball. 1 ball, 1 strike. Nagy with a low pitch count so far tonight as he works 1 out into the 5th inning. Two balls and a strike. That's Baroa at second base. And Jose Herrera out of the Dominican Republic played in a handful of games last year for Oakland. A little over 30 games and hit .243. Just 23 years old. Lines it into the left. Albert Bell is right there to make the catch for the out. 2 gone. Top of the order coming up. Reminders, the Stanley Cup playoffs unfold. Your place for all the news and highlights from the NHL is NHL Tonight on ESPN2. Following the game, don't miss tomorrow night. It's following the Flyers and the Panthers on ESPN2. Baroa at second base. Ernie Young steps in. Young hitless, 0 for 2. Didn't look good there. Strike 1.
Yeah, that's what you call sitting on a pitch and swinging no matter what. He was sitting dead red, sitting for a fastball, and he threw him an off-speed pitch, and he was just committed that he was going to attack that first pitch fastball. And it doesn't hurt to do that on a lot of occasions if you're a hitter. You say, I'm going to look for this fastball and I'm going to drill it. You don't get it, so what? You still have 2 strikes left.
This one is down. 1 ball and 1 strike. And Young has some pop in his bat, as we mentioned yesterday, picking up his first home run of the year. Hit 15 home runs at the AAA level last year. And a power-filled spring with 8 home runs this year in the spring. Rolls it towards short. Backhanded pickup by Vizquel, and the toss is in time to retire the side. No runs, a hit, an error, a man left. On to the 6th. 6-0 Cleveland. As the village people wait for the concert after the game, it's 6-0. The Indians leading the Athletics. There's a little warm-up act there. A new pitcher into this game. Mark Aker takes over for Carlos Reyes.
Well, Reyes pitched well. Unfortunately, had that one very bad inning in the 5th inning. I think a couple of walks to Vizquel and Lawson were his undoing.
And Aker delivers a strike to Manny Ramirez. Ramirez 0 for 2, hitting .260. You saw the numbers on Aker. There's a strike. He's ahead. He was recalled at the end of April when Jim Corsi, who the A's thought at the beginning of the year might be their closer in the bullpen, but he had a groin problem, went on the disabled list. Aker was at Edmonton and had gone 2-1 with a couple saves and an earned run average of barely over 1 there. This one is down, a ball and 2 strikes. And his only appearance came on the 30th, so it was 7 days between appearances out of the bullpen for Aker. So if nothing else, he should be strong. We'll see how sharp he is with that week-long layoff. Well, he gets the first man he faces. Ramirez is out on strikes. And Ramirez is 0 for 3 tonight.
Well, he doesn't pick this ball up well because he never started in the strike zone and he chases the slider away. When you see a hitter swinging a pitch that never starts in the strike zone, quite often they do not pick the ball up from the release point on the pitcher until it's too late.
Here's Jim Thome. Thome started the 5-run 5th with a double. A ball to no strikes. Thome out of Peoria, Illinois. This last year has been a dream for him. as it has been for a number of Cleveland Indians and Indian fans. After a long dry spell, the Indians captured the imagination of Cleveland with a 100-win season last year. Baker airs it out a little bit and throws it by Thome. 2-1. Indians scored a run in the third inning and 5 in the fifth. Franco, Baerga, and then Bell with the 3-run home run, accounting for the fifth inning runs. There's a strike on a 90-mile-per-hour delivery from Mark Aker.
If you think about the matchup in the World Series last year, the Indians and the Braves, and you wonder how that matchup would stack up this year after both teams have made a couple of changes.
Foul ball.
The question would still remain, could the Atlanta Braves pitchers dominate the Indians hitters? We talked about how the Indians kill mediocre pitching. Well, obviously the Braves do not have mediocre pitching. So it'd be an interesting matchup. I think the answer would still lie with the Cleveland Indians pitchers and how well they could hold the Braves down, because I still believe the Atlanta Braves pitching staff would hold the Indians hitters in check, or any hitters for that matter. It's not, you know, the Braves they have such an excellent pitching staff, especially their starting pitchers and their closers, so they usually can hold any team in check, and I still think they would hold the Cleveland Indians in check. So it'd be up to guys like Hershiser, Martinez, Nagy to match them in holding down the Atlanta Braves offense.
The 3-2 check swing and a foul ball. That ball rolled down the left side and then started to roll back fair, but it was foul. There's the breakout in the American League Central. The Indians at the moment 20-11. They dropped their front three. Lost 2 in a row twice since then, dropping the first 2 games here in Oakland. But they're out in front 6-0 tonight, and a line drive base hit for Thome. So Thome's on for the second time. That's the 7th hit for the Indians. Let's go back to Gary Miller.
Dwayne, what a pitcher's doing going on down the coast in Anaheim. Just ask Chili Davis, who's had to face Kevin Appier all night. Nothing but donuts. Finley has matched him. Both have gone 6, given up 2 hits and 8 strikeouts apiece. Back to you.
Either that was Balsa Wood or Chili Davis is one strong individual, right? Man.
They're scoreless down the coast. Alomar with a tap charged by Bordick. He'll go to first. Out there as Thome advances. No chance, as Bordick had to charge that ball and had just the play at first.
He tries to check his swing, but hits a little slow chopper to short. This is a difficult play for a shortstop because you have to charge it, make sure you get the good hop, and still throw on the run. I think the big test for a shortstop is how he guns the ball from the hole, how he goes to his right and deep in the hole. But that's also a difficult play for a shortstop as well, a charging play.
There's the Indian shortstop, Omar Vizquel, who scored 2 runs tonight, 2 of the 6 runs by the Indians. A ball to no strikes to count. Reached on an infield hit, stole a base in the 3rd, and walked in the 5th inning and scored in each frame. And a strike is called. 1-1. Jim Thome, the base runner at second. Vizquel lifts it back into right center field. Herrera on the run and can't get there. Extra bases. Thome scores, and Vizquel will stop at second with the double, on for the 3rd straight time as he chases home a run to make it 7-0. Vizquel's 10th double of the year and his 12th run driven home.
Vizquel is supposed to be the weak link in this batting order, but He's having a good season, hitting over 280. He takes this fastball right in the middle of the plate, and he hits it up the gap in right center field. You see Herrera, it looked like he had a chance for it, but ball's over his head. You see Herrera, he actually came in and then had to go back, but I'm not so sure he could have gotten there anyway. That ball was hit pretty well. It's usually not playing that deep either.
And now Kenny Lofton, who's been on a couple times and scored a run, takes a strike. Ground ball to short. Bordick shoots it to first to retire the side, but the Indians pick up a run. We're headed into the bottom of the sixth. Mark McGwire due to bat third. 7-0 Cleveland.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by your Cooper Tire and Rubber Company. Cooper, your next set of tires. And by Yamaha Wave Runners. They do things other watercraft don't.
Indians are leading this one as we go into the bottom of the sixth inning from Oakland. So after the A's won the first two games, the Indians have come charging back to take a 7-0 lead. And Brent Gates will open the sixth inning for the A's against Charles Nagy. Gates, then Jason Giambi, followed by Mark McGwire. First pitch to Gates is a ball.
About 3 years ago, Tony La Russa said that he thought before Brent Gates' career was over, he would win a batting championship and contend. He has not reached that potential yet, although he's had some pretty good streaks at times.
2 balls, no strikes. There's Art Howe along with Denny Walling on his coaching staff here.
Both of those guys were teammates of mine in 1980 at Houston.
Strike call. It's 2-1.
Denny Walling, one of the best pinch hitters in baseball during his time. When he wasn't starting, left-handed hitter, played a lot for the Mets. He was just a very fine hitter.
High fly ball, center field. Lofton is there and makes the catch for the out. Walling started his pro career in the Oakland system before being dealt to Houston, and now he's back here in Oakland as a member of the coaching staff alongside Art Howe.
It is often overlooked, Dwayne, because they are such a good offensive ball club. But the reason the Cleveland Indians win a lot of ball games and stay out of long losing streaks is because they have several stoppers on their staff. Nagy is capable of stopping a losing streak, which he's trying to do tonight.
Jason Giambi takes one high, ball 1.
Hershiser is capable. Martinez, and also Jack McDowell. So now you stay out of long losing streaks, and that's really what separates the good teams from the mediocre teams.
And a strike call. It's 1-1. Well, they come in with the 4th best team ERA in the American League so far this year, and they really haven't pitched the way they think they can pitch.
And that's a deceiving statistic as far as I'm concerned.
Fly ball back into right center. Catchable. Ramirez makes the grab.
And the reason I think it's a deceiving statistic, Dwayne, is because if you're ahead 7-0 as they are now, your job is to keep the other team from getting 7 runs, not to get 1 or 2. So you pitch a little differently when you're ahead. You know, so sometimes an earned run average or team earned run average is deceptive when you're on a winning team, because you're pitching to win, not to keep the other team from scoring.
Yeah, especially when you're on a winning team that scores lots of runs, as the Indians can do. There's the breakdown starters in the bullpen. McGwire, Mark McGwire, fouls this one. Strike 1.
Because on several occasions last year during the World Series, we saw the Cleveland staff match the Atlanta Braves staff pitch for pitch for 6, 7, maybe 8 innings.
McGwire batting with the bases empty. 1 ball, 1 strike. Nagy, usually with very good control. He has walked just 1 tonight. That was McGwire in the 4th inning. He's ahead of him now, a ball and 2 strikes. McGuire, great strength. He waits up there, great quickness. And is out on strikes. Could not check in time. 1, 2, 3 go the A's. On to the 7th inning. Albert Bell due to hit third in the 7th for the Indians. 7-0 Cleveland. 7-0 the Indians leading Oakland as Cleveland comes into bat in the top of the 7th inning. Julio Franco with a couple of runs batted in this game leads off against Mark Aker. Aker throws a strike. An RBI single in the 3rd and a sacrifice fly in the 5th for Franco. That's headed out of play, and the count goes to 0-2.
Franco was the guy that helped them manufacture their first 2 runs, which gave them a lead. Of course, Albert Bell's 3-run homer made it a moot point, but while this was a tight ball game, he was the one that was helping them manufacture runs by going the other way, hitting sacrifice flies, doing the little things that help you win.
One ball, 2 strikes. Albert Bell due to bat 3rd here in the 7th inning with Franco and Baerga hitting ahead of him. 2-2. Five innings for Reyes. He was charged with 6 runs. Aker gave up a run in the 6th. It's going to be out of play, and the count holds at 2 balls, 2 strikes. Despite having dropped the first 2 games of this series, the Indians still had won 18 of their last 24. Now 9 games over 500. 100 wins last year in the abbreviated schedule. 144. Franco is out on strikes for the first out. Let's go back to the studio and Gary Miller.
Told you about the great pitchers duel. Kevin Apier will fool Garrett Anderson. He'll inside out it. He'll bloop it in the left field. Tommy Goodwin, maybe the fastest man in baseball, tried to get to it. It goes away. A fan will come out of the stands. David Howard's pointing to it. They wanted the ground rule double. They gave him a triple. Jack Powell followed with a single. Bob Boone was incensed. He knows this ballpark, but he lost the argument and down. Apier is now down 1-0, although they did catch Howell stealing after the RBI. Back to you.
All right, thanks, Gary. Carlos Baerga at the plate with a strike to count. Franco struck out. Now Baerga faces Aker. Baerga with a run scored, a base hit, and a run batted in. All of that in the 5th inning. Facing Aker for the first time. A chop to the right side for Gates. And he throws out Baerga. 2 up, 2 down in the 7th inning.
As Bell walks to the plate, I want to make a point here, and that point is that a lot of times they think of Bell as a free swinger or just a slugger, but he's really more than that. I mean, he's a guy that can adjust to what you're doing to him, and we saw him adjust to the changeup that Reyes threw him to hit the 3-run homer. His last at bat, Reyes got him out with the changeup in the 1st inning. So he has been able to adjust, not just this year, but his entire, the last couple of years. He even made adjustments in the World Series when they kept pitching him away, hit the ball into the right field stand. So that's why he has been so consistent the last few years, is that he is able to make adjustments. He just doesn't go up there swinging in the same zone or looking for the same pitch or looking for a fastball every time. I've watched him hit breaking balls down and away for home runs. I've watched him hit fastballs in. I've seen him hit just about every pitch that you can throw, hit out of the ballpark, and that's the reason that he has been so consistent. He makes adjustments.
He sends the one-strike pitch down the right side, and on the run, Herrera got his glove on it, but that was it. And down into the corner it goes as Bell winds up at second. Herrera racing toward the line, had his glove out there, thought he was going to catch the ball, and the ball wound up in the right field corner.
Well, because even though Bell's a pull hitter, they play him around. That ball was high enough. I thought Herrera was going to get there. And let's take a look at the end of it. See, he seems to slow down right there. I'm not so sure that he didn't lose the ball or something, but he did slow down because he looked like he was going to get there, and then it hit off his glove.
So Bell's at second base. They will apparently give him a double, the 9th Cleveland hit. They initially, now they've ruled an error, so they don't have to take the 9th hit away.
That's a tough error. I mean, you're playing around to the left, right center field, and a slugger hits the ball down the line. I mean, there's no doubt that it looked like he was going to get there, but I mean, that's a tough error to give and take a hit away from Albert Bell.
Murray rolls the 1-0 pitch to second. Gates will throw him out, and the top of the 7th inning is over. A man left on. Bottom of the 7th coming. 7-0 Indians.
Another update from Anaheim. We showed you Garrett Anderson tripling with the help of a fan who came onto the field. They gave him third base. Jack Howell gave the Angels a 1-0 lead for Chuck Finley off Kevin Apier, the second hit of the game. And as for that fan, he got us. Oh, that'll teach you to go onto the field. You may have gotten the Angels the lead, but you're out of here, son. You cannot go on the field. 1-0 California. Back to you.
A reminder, we'll be in Anaheim Sunday night, ESPN Sunday Night Baseball. The Indians and the Angels. I noticed, Joe, the dad didn't leave.
That's what I was going to say. Now, I hope that wasn't his father sitting there that let him be taken away by himself.
Son, you're old enough now to be on your own. See ya. Well, that's more like it.
Yeah.
Bottom of the 7th inning. 7-0. Bill Plantier leading off for Oakland. Nagy's pitch is down and away, ball 1. So Nagy, through 6 innings, has shut out the Oakland Athletics. He had one shutout last year. That was against the Yankees en route to a 16-6 overall record. The count is a ball and a strike. 17-game winner a few years ago. In 1992, he was 17-10.
It was interesting the way he pitched Plantier in the 4th inning when he had a runner at second base. He made a conscious effort to keep the fastball up, and he got Plantier to hit a fly ball.
Foul out of play, and the count goes to 2-2.
But that tells you that there is a way to pitch Plantier. If you can keep the ball up, you can get him out, and that's one of the reasons that he doesn't hit for a high average. And it's just the opposite of what I was talking about with Albert Bell. There's really not any one pattern you can stay in and get him out consistently, and that's what makes for a good hitter. Every hitter has some weaknesses, has a weakness, whether it's inside, outside, up, or down. There is a weakness in every hitter. But as long as that weakness is not a glaring weakness, you can still hit for a pretty good average. But Plantier's weakness is the fastball above the belt. If you make mistakes, you'll hit the ball out of the ballpark. But if you do not make mistakes, you can get him out.
And we have a full count.
I'll never forget the first time I saw his stance when he was at Boston.
Oh, when he was way down.
He was sitting down. Yeah. Yeah.
Big cut, and just a piece of that one.
Well, he doesn't get cheated up there. I mean, he swings the bat, he attacks the ball.
Well, his approach is exactly the opposite of what you talked about earlier with Franco and a lot of the Indians. And there's no way that he's going to be anywhere near on top of the ball.
No, he's not going to get on top of very many. But that's why his timing has to be perfect, because when you swing up, you only have one little area there where you can hit the ball.
And a little liner that's going to fall into left field for a base hit. So he has his second hit tonight. So far this year, Nagy, coming into this game against left-handed hitters, had given up an average of 343.
Well, see, this pitch is down, and that's why he's able to hit it. If you have a little uppercut in your swing, or you swing up a little bit, you like the ball down, and you can handle that pitch, and that pitch was down. But with a 3-2 count, Nagy wasn't about to walk him. Good pitching, actually, and good hitting there by Plantier.
Now Terry Steinbach takes one low, blocked by Alomar. Steinbach, the veteran catcher, 0 for 2 tonight with a ground ball and a strikeout. Steinbach's done a nice job behind the plate in his career with Oakland. Has given them some big hits at the plate. Pretty good run producer. A 2-ball, no strike count. This one down. And on this club, a young club in the rebuilding stage, he's a steadying influence. Nobody out with a man at first, and Steinbach up in the count 3-0.
I saw a couple of articles last week, Dwayne, that kind of puzzled me, and it was really kind of, both articles were criticizing Tony La Russa for his.
That's a nice pickup by Thome at third. The throw down to second gets the lead man there for the force for the out.
Nice pickup by Thome, but again, not a good throw to second base. But first of all, with a 6-0 lead, just make sure you get one. So he comes up with it. Nice pickup right there. Take your time and make sure you make a good throw to second base. But that has been a problem for him throwing. And a nice play at second base there by Baerga. Well, the point I was making is they were saying that, you know, Tony La Russa was more of a dictator and et cetera, and Art Howe was a more lenient, you know, things like that. I was a little perplexed, I guess, about that, because I mean, if that was the case, why didn't they say that when he was here? Why did they wait till he went to St. Louis to make those statements?
Easier to do that.
Yeah.
A strike to count to Berra. Now he's down 0-2. And sometimes those things, you can say exactly what you want to say when you verbalize it, but when you see it in print, it has a little different impact.
It was a little different.
Line drive, and Thome's been busy at third to make this grab.
And that ball was sinking a little bit. He started to jump for it, and the ball came down, and he didn't really catch it cleanly. But that was a tough play there. Berra swings kind of, he gets on top of the ball, the opposite of Phil Plantier. Watch him get on top of this ball, see? And he rips it with his wrist. And right there, you see Thome kind of flinch because that ball started to sink a little bit.
That's the second out. And Mike Bordick steps in against Nagy. Strike is called.
I guess my point with La Russa was, whether you like him or not, he kind of put baseball in Oakland back on the map. He won a world championship with this team, and he got him into the World Series 3 times.
Bordick went after that one, 0-2. And the comments I saw from La Russa to follow up that story was he was very gracious about wishing the A's all the best and expressing his confidence in Art Howe's ability to handle the situation here with the ball club in Oakland. 1 ball, 2 strikes.
I guess it's difficult sometimes when you're praising one person, people tend to take it maybe that you're criticizing another. You know, when I said that I thought Mo Vaughn, you know, was a good recipient of the MVP award last year. Some people may have thought I was criticizing Albert Bell. That wasn't the case, because I think they both could have won easily. But I think Art Howe, his personality is easier going than LaRussa's.
The 2-2 is popped into short left center. Vizquel is out there to make the catch to retire the side. We're through 7, headed into the 8th. It's 7-0 Indians. So these same Indians will be back with us on ESPN on the Sunday night game of the week as they continue their road trip and move into Anaheim to take on the California Angels. Indians with a 7-0 lead in Oakland as we head into the 8th inning, and the A's bring out a new pitcher, right-hander John Briscoe. He follows Reyes and Aker. Aker worked 2 innings, gave up a run on 2 hits. Briscoe 0-1 with a save, a .386 earned run average over 12 appearances this year. Meanwhile, Charles Nagy has been in control, shutting out the Athletics on 4 hits so far. The Indians have Manny Ramirez to lead off. Ramirez looking for his first hit. Struck out swinging in the 6th inning. That was against Aker. But now faces Briscoe. Briscoe, a fastball, and he throws it by him. Strike 1. Ball game in the 8th from Oakland. Right center field, Young is there, and he makes the catch for the out. Hey, Friday night here on ESPN, Detroit and St. Louis meet in Game 4 of their Western Conference semifinal. Tonight, the Blues, Igor Kravchuk scored the winning goal in overtime, and the Blues beat the Red Wings 5-4. So don't miss Game 4 Friday night on ESPN. Now Jim Thome. There's a couple of runs scored with a double and a single in 3 trips. Fouls it out of play for a strike. So Thome's average back over the .290 mark this time around. A 5-run 5th, the big inning for Cleveland. Thome looks at a strike, and Briscoe has the jump on him. 2 strikes. Thome started to go, but checked the ball in 2 strikes. So far, Briscoe has been very good against left-handed hitters this year. They're just 2 out of 19 against him. He's ahead of Thome.
Well, he has a very deceptive motion. Kind of jumps at you, and he throws a pretty good breaking ball, and he has a pretty good fastball. So his motion kind of helps him a little bit against left-handers. You don't pick the ball up quite as quickly as you would like, because his body comes before he lets his arm be seen by the hitter.
And he strikes out Thome. 2 up, 2 down.
And that's an example of what I was talking about. He jumped at Thome and got Thome out front. And he gets his first strikeout. Now watch him jump at Thome. Well, he doesn't jump too quickly in slow motion, but he jumps and he gets Thome out in front a little bit.
So the bases are empty for Sandy Alomar against Briscoe, who starts him with a strike.
When Briscoe throws strikes with his breaking ball, he's usually pretty successful because, you know, that, again, that pitch is hard to pick up because of his motion.
That's a tap foul. 2 strikes.
take a look at Briscoe's motion. See how he jumps towards you a little bit before he releases, and then his arm comes. And that body motion kind of fools the hitter a little bit.
Foul on the play. So the count is still 2 strikes. When you talk about pitchers having everything in sync, it would seem that that would be an extra challenge for Briscoe, the way he lunges out there.
Well, it is.
He strikes out Alomar. 2 strikeouts in the inning. 1, 2, 3 go the Indians, and we're headed into the bottom of the 8th with the score: Cleveland 7 and Oakland nothing.
20 and better than ever.
ESPN's Wednesday Night Baseball is brought to you by your local Sherwin-Williams paint and decorating stores. Ask Sherwin-Williams, America's neighborhood place for paint. And by Office Depot, taking care of business for companies of every size, everywhere, every day.
And our Sherwin-Williams pitching summary: Charles Nagy, everything under control so far. Through 90 pitches, 7 innings, 4 hits, just 1 walk, and 3 strikeouts. Carlos Reyes charged with 6 runs in 5 innings. 5 of those runs coming in the 5th. He struck out 4 and walked 2. Alvaro Espinosa takes over at third base as we go into the bottom of the 8th. And Jose Herrera leads off for Oakland. First pitch is a strike. The young outfielder 0 for 2 at the plate. He was charged with an error in the 7th inning on the ball hit by Albert Bell. Foul ball, 0-2. Nagy looking for his 6th career win over Oakland. His overall record in the big leagues, 61 and 50. He just turned 29 last Sunday. Now still 2 strikes.
For the most part, he has done what he had to do, and that was keep the ball down. And he's only gone upstairs on occasion to Mark McGwire and Phil Plantier, who are both very good low ball hitters. So he has pitched a very effective ball game in that he has been able to spot his pitches and keep the hitters off balance.
He's ahead of Herrera. Herrera joined the A's when Scott Brocious went on the disabled list. He was playing at Huntsville. Off the plate, and the count is a ball and 2 strikes. Nagy had shoulder surgery. We mentioned that 17-win season he had in '92, and the following year he struggled with shoulder problems, and in June of '93 had surgery. 2 balls and 2 strikes.
You can see that he's taken this opportunity to try to work on his changeup, although he wants to throw a Herrera changeups anyway. Because he has such a big lead and he got ahead in the count, he can work on his changeup.
Down and in, and the count goes to 3 balls and 2 strikes. The 3-2. And a line drive into center field. Lofton tried to shoestring it on a dive, but could not make the play. Herrera in at second, ahead first, as Albert Bell had to come over and retrieve the ball on the carom. A sinking line drive. Lofton tried to grab it and came up just inches short.
Well, Lofton made a quick decision. That decision was he thought he had a chance to get in and get it. Normally you play this safe and hold it to a single, but Kenny Lofton doesn't have a safe bone in his body. He goes after everything, and Bell gets over and makes it a close play at second base.
Now Herrera's in at second base. to lead off the bottom of the 8th. Now the top of the order, Ernie Young swings over this one, strike one.
I said that, you know, Nagy looked like he was trying to work on his changeup to Herrera. You know, if people say you work on things in the bullpen, and that's true, but you need to throw them in the game so that you can find out if they're effective or not, because the hitters will let you know if it's a good changeup or not.
Short order.
Yeah.
Right.
So you have to throw it in the ball game to find out if this is going to be a pitch you can throw under pressure or throw at certain times in the ball game when you need an out or a pop-up.
1-1 the count. Little tap, right side. Alomar out from back of the plate. Got the angle and makes the play, and over to third goes Herrera. So Young is out.
Nice communication there. Nice play by Alomar. He made sure that Nagy did not getting his way. He called him off right away, so Nagy was able to get out of the way. And we've seen that Nagy's a good fielding pitcher. See how quickly he comes off. He thinks he can make the play, but you see right there, Alomar waves him off. He gets out of his way, and they record the out at first base.
That's the first out. And here's Brent Gates. Gates looking for his first hit tonight, and the pitch is a strike on the outside corner. Gates, 26-year-old switch hitting infielder. And a tap to the right side. Franco with a toss to Nagy, and Herrera crosses the plate, and the A's are on the scoreboard. Gates will get credit for the run batted in. That's his 14th run batted in of the year. And it's 7-1.
The batter, third baseman Jason Giambi.
2 outs with the bases empty as Art Howell looks on. He saw his club win 2 to get back to the 500 mark. And here's Jason Giambi. Too high, ball 1. Giambi doubled in the 4th inning. And he hits this one a mile. Way back it goes, and goodbye. He parks it in the construction beyond the fence and right. His 5th home run. Giambi gives the Oakland fans a little something to cheer about after their club got down 7-0. Picked up a run in the 8th, and now Giambi's added another run with a solo shot. Here's Mark McGwire. The pitch is high, ball 1.
And you can see again he's making a conscious effort to keep the ball up on McGwire as he did with Plantier, but
Two and nothing. Giambi hitting the home run. So when he learned to hit, his father taught him to hit the other way. He said pulling the ball would more or less take care of itself. Well, it did that time with that long shot to right.
interesting concept.
2-1.
Why not the other way?
The logic behind that, he says, this was inside 3-1, is that it's more difficult to hit the ball the other way than it is to pull the ball. He thought he'd do that naturally. So if he could learn to hit the ball the other way, he could use the entire field, and the pulling the ball would come. Well,
interesting philosophy.
There's a liner into left. McGwire will get 2 out of this as Bell makes the pickup at the base of the fence out there. The double by McGwire.
Giambi hit a ball in the gap in the left center field for a double, and he drove that ball, so I guess that's what his father wanted him to do. Now he gets a pitch inside corner, and he pulls this one, and he pulls it a long way to right field into the second deck. Well, I know it doesn't quite make it, but a long home run to right anyway. But I was only playing the devil's advocate there, in that, you know, you say, well, if you can hit the ball the other way, that how can you automatically pull the ball? There are guys who can pull the ball and can't go the other way. So basically, you have to be a good hitter to be able to do both. I know a lot of guys who can pull the ball and can't hit it the other way. Then I know some guys who can go the other way and are not good at pulling the pitch.
There's Torey Lovullo, who's on the pinch run at second for McGuire. Well, Giambi's strong enough to pull the ball, as we saw there. And the fact that he uses all the field, you figure overall, will help that average. Here's Phil Plantier. Mark Wiley back in the dugout after a visit to Nagy. A ball, no strikes, the count to Plantier. Paul Ossenmacher is the left-hander, and Eric Plunk is the right-hander in the Cleveland bullpen. And a high fly ball toward the left field line. Bell on the run and is there to make the catch. Albert Bell grabs that one, and Oakland will settle for 2 runs in the 8th. We're headed into the 9th. The score is the Indians 7 and the Athletics 2. We're headed into the 9th inning with the Indians leading 7-2. The big inning for the Indians was the 5th when they scored 5, and the big shot in that one, Albert Bell, in the 5th, belting a 3-run home run.
And earlier in the ball game, he was struck out on a high fastball after being set up with the changeup. And in the next at bat in the 5th, what he tries to do, Reyes here tries to set him up with another changeup, and he just goes out and hits a bullet down the left field line, and it stays fair. That's a good example of how a hitter has to adjust to what the pitcher's doing. He did not let him set him up with the changeup that at bat and get him out with the high fastball as he did in the 4th inning. I think Bell knew he wanted to throw him a lot of changeups, and he was sitting on it or looking for it.
Torey Lovullo takes over at first after running for McGuire in the bottom of the 8th, so he's then at first in the 9th. Omar Vizquel takes the ball, and the top of the 9th is underway. Vizquel has been on 3 times tonight with a single, a walk, and a double. He has a run driven home.
Good hitters are always thinking along with the pitcher, and the pitcher obviously is always thinking along with the hitter. I remember one of the classic lines I read once. Don Sutton had a no-hitter, and he had struck Willie Stargell out 3 times with a curveball, and on the 4th at bat, Stargell hit a home run.
Hey, Vizquel is on base again. A base hit into right for the Indians shortstop. 3 for 3 with a walk.
Stargell hit a home run to break up his no-hitter, and after the game they asked him, they said, well, why did you throw him a fastball? He said, well, I struck him out 3 times with a curveball, and I figured he was looking for the curveball. So Stargell says, well, he had struck me out 3 times with the curveball. I figured he might want to try something different to set me up. So they were thinking right along the same lines.
Now Kenny Lofton facing John Briscoe. Too low, ball 1.
But I think that's one of the great things about baseball is there are so many little things going on at all times. We only see the major things or the results of the thinking that goes into an at-bat or a pitch being thrown. But there are a lot of little things that go into making up the pitcher's mind on where he's going to throw the pitch or what the pitch is going to be.
Upstairs, 2 balls, no strikes. Well, there's the decision-making process, and as you talked about thinking, hitters and pitchers thinking together, and then you hear of pitchers who think too much, sometimes hitters who think too much.
I agree with both. Sometimes you overthink as a hitter, and sometimes you overthink as a pitcher. I mean, that's what separates the good players, you know, from the great players, from the mediocre players. I mean, handling what goes on out there on the field, whether it's defensively or whether it's just being in the batter's box. I mean, when you step in that batter's box, there's probably 80 different thoughts that go through your mind in that 30 seconds before the pitcher throws the ball to you.
Briscoe picks up a strike, and now it's 3-1.
I mean, if a pitcher throws you a fastball over the outside corner for a strike, now everything goes through your mind. You wonder, is he going to come inside now? Is he going to go back away? Is he going to change speeds? I mean, all these things cross your mind. And as a hitter, you have to be able to separate it and say, I'm going to look for the ball and attack the ball.
There's ball 4 to Lofton. So a single and a walk. So Briscoe, who breezed through the 8th, 1, 2, 3 with a couple strikeouts, has put the first 2 men on here on that single and a walk. And now we get into Julio Franco, who has a couple of runs batted in tonight. He drove in the first run with a single in the 3rd. Nobody out in the 9th. Briscoe misses high for a ball. So he's struggling now to find the strike zone. Picks it up there, and it's 1-1. The right-hander, Todd Van Poppel, Buddy Groom, the left-hander in the Oakland bullpen.
As most people may know, Van Poppel has only recently been sent to the bullpen. He has been a starter most of this season and most of his career with the A's, although he was in the bullpen for a while last year.
2 balls and a strike to count. Franco, the hitter. Top of the 9th from Oakland. Foul back, and the count goes to 2-2. They're tied in Anaheim, bottom of the 9th. Angels and the Royals, 1-1. California started the day 3 games out of first in the West behind Texas. The 2-2 upstairs. So full count.
That game in Anaheim, very difficult situation there for Latchman, the manager, when Percival had done so well as the stopper while Lee Smith was out, and now Lee Smith is back. Very difficult decision to make. You know, do I use Lee Smith or do I use Percival?
The 3-2 down to 3rd. Throw to second out there. Over to first is not in time. So they get the force on Lofton. Giambi to Gates. Briscoe winds up at 3rd, and Franco is at first on a fielder's choice. That's the first out of the inning. And Carlos Baerga will bat.
Baerga has been in some very good situations tonight. But I guess that's what happens when you hit behind guys like Lawson and Franco. In the first inning, he had a runner at 3rd with less than 2 outs. He didn't get him in. And in the 5th, he did single with runners at 1st and 3rd to drive in a run. And to keep the inning alive for Albert Bell, who followed with a 3-run homer. So, very key hit he had there in the 5th inning with 2 outs.
So Bell is on deck here in the 9th inning. 1st and 3rd, 1 out. Baerga, a ball, no strikes the count. Baerga lifts it into center. Young is coming in and makes the catch for the out, and the runners will hang on right there at 1st and 3rd. So Baerga goes out to center. Runners still at 1st and 3rd, now with 2 outs for Albert Bell.
This should be an interesting at-bat to see how the A's go after him now. After he hit the home run for a home run off of the changeup, the next at-bat they went after him with hard stuff, fastball, and he hit the fly ball down the right field line that was scored an error on Jose Herrera. And this will be interesting to see if they come after him with hard stuff again. Well, Bristol just about has to because he throws the fastball and then the slider. But we'll see how they pitch him.
So Bell officially tonight, 1 out of 4. Lifts it into center field, going after the first pitch. Young makes the catch to retire the side, and we're headed into the bottom of the 9th. It's a 7-2 ball game. Cleveland on top. Indians leading 7-2 as we go into the bottom of the 9th inning. Charles Nagy has been lifted in favor of Jose Mesa, who as great a year as Albert Bell had for the Indians last year. Some think Mesa was the most valuable member of this Cleveland team.
Well, he was definitely, you know, almost unhittable at times last year. He went several, you know, about, what did he go, 15 or 16 before he had a blown save. But it was interesting for me to watch he and Mark Wohlers go at it in the World Series. One was trying to outthrow the other. They were throwing awfully well.
Well, he's 12 of 12 in the save opportunity department this year. Nagy worked 8 innings. And now Mesa to face Terry Steinbach, who fouls the first pitch out of play, strike 1. Steinbach looking for his first hit. Lifts it into right field. Manny Ramirez broke in, now has to go back, and that ball is off his glove into the bottom of the fence out there. Ramirez first broke in, and that ball sailed over his head and off his glove.
When the ball was first hit, I thought it was just going to be a routine out to right field, but the ball did carry well, and as you mentioned, Ramirez did not get a good jump on it. There you see him start in, and then all of a sudden he has to retrace his steps, and he's still got a glove on it. Almost made the catch. That's interesting. Now, is that a base hit?
Giving him a hit.
Yeah, see, that's the point. If that's a base hit, then Albert Bell's ball was also a base hit.
Here's Geronimo Baroa. Pitch is in there for a strike. Baroa has a base hit back in the 5th inning. Hitting .246. He's out of play, and he's quickly behind Jose Mesa. So Steinbach gets credit for a hit, the 8th hit of the night for Oakland, the first hit of the ball game for Steinbach. Now, you could make a stronger case for an error given on that one than you could the ball that Herrera was charged with an error on the ball hit by Bell. You actually had an outfielder breaking the wrong way. Out of play, holding the count at 2 strikes. Mesa in here getting some work. Going to close it. This one too low. 1 ball and 2 strikes. That one in at 94. That's too low. 2 balls, 2 strikes. The Indians looking for their 21st win of the year, trying to go 10 games over 500 again. After Oakland had won the first 2 games of this series to get back to 500. Ground ball, that's going to go through into center field for a base hit. Steinbach will hold at third. Baroa bounced it through the middle. And the A's have men at first and third with nobody out.
This pitch is down and away, and Baroa grounds it back through the middle, and that's why Steinbach didn't break right away, because Mesa had an opportunity to field it. He didn't. But if he would have caught it and Steinbach would have been breaking, they would have taken him. So with a 5-run deficit, you do not take chances, just play it safe, because your run really doesn't mean anything. Fans are a little upset because Steinbach didn't score, but it doesn't really matter in this situation.
Here's Mike Bordick. His hitless streak is now out to 0 for 20. This will make it 21 on a double play ball. Steinbach crosses the plate, scoring on the double play. So it's 7-3. Be sure and stick around now. SportsCenter is coming up next. Brett Haber and Mike Tirico standing by as Brett Butler talks about his condition. Hawks and the Magic, game 1 of their Eastern Conference. Red Wings and the Blues went overtime. Stanley Cup Western Conference semifinal action. Here's Jose Herrera. And the pitch is a strike. So it's a 7-3 ball game. Herrera doubled and scored in the 8th inning. He's behind Mesa, 0-2. Mesa working in relief of Nagy. Away, 1 ball and 2 strikes. This would be the 5th win of the year for Charles Nagy, extending his record to 5-1. Two balls, 2 strikes. Steinbach has scored a run to make it 7-3. Base is empty now, 2 gone. And the ground ball, that's going to go through, a base hit. So Herrera keeps it alive. Well, the A's are now in double figures in the hit department. Herrera on with his 2nd hit. Talking with Ron Washington, his first base coach. And here's the top of the Oakland batting order, Ernie Young. Young is 0 for 4. The Athletics have actually out-hit the Indians now, 10-9, but trail 7-3. And Mesa starts Young with a strike.
Well, I think he's a little upset, and he's going to reach back and just turn it loose. I mean, that was probably his best fastball of the inning. I mean, this one had flames leaping off of it, 96 miles an hour.
The 0-2. Young fouls it to stay alive. Jose Mesa. The emergence of Mesa to close games for the Indians, a big part of their 100-win season. He's up for this one. 1 ball and 2 strikes. Well, the A's will have Minnesota and Baltimore coming in to finish out the homestand. The Indians will be headed down to Anaheim to start a weekend series against the Angels. 2 balls, 2 strikes. Young working against Mesa. Here it is, and another foul ball to keep it alive. So the A's are not going quietly. They're down 7-3.
Actually, everything we've seen from the Cleveland Indians kind of goes in line with what we talked about at the beginning of the telecast, and that is good hitting, good pitching, and suspect defense. You know, they can make some mistakes out there.
Close, but now we have a full count. 3-2 to Young.
Well, because they hit the ball so well, normally they cover up most of their defensive mistakes.
They've scored 7 runs tonight. The 3-2. Young sends it into right field. Ramirez going back. He's there and makes the catch to end this one. So the Indians have beaten the Athletics 7-3, and they pick up a win, 1 win in this 3-game series.
Well, I think the Cleveland Indians, as I mentioned, they look like the Cleveland Indians. Maybe the best team in all of baseball, or at least the best team in the American League. So I'll get a chance to see them down in Anaheim against the Angels this week.
That'll be coming up Sunday. The win goes to Nagy. He is 5-1. Again, the final score from the Coliseum in Oakland. The Indians 7 and the A's 3. A reminder, SportsCenter is next with NBA and NHL playoff action, so don't go away. For Joe Morgan and our entire ESPN crew, I'm Dwayne Staats saying good night from Oakland, California.